Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So guys, I am still in Madrid, but my wife and I are coming home today. Before I get into this, thank you to the patrons. Thank you to my people who donate Super Cash. What you guys do is immensely important. Well, important is too strong, but I appreciate it. I guess that's my point. The other day, I gave Democrats credit because I said these guys, for the first time in a very long time, were representing an interest. Now, I don't like this idea that they focus on identity. I hate this idea that they focus on identity because I think ultimately the issue is economics. And I think if you're going to parse identity and economics in this way, I think you lose the thread. I don't think you can parse those things, at least and not function adequately. But Democrats do. They parse it. They don't like to talk about economics because they don't want to address the issues of their donors, despite income inequality being at record levels. But, well, whatever. That being said, and this is a separate conversation, I'm making a point that if you're going to focus on identity to the degree that you focus on identity, then you should represent identity, if that's what you're going to do. I gave them credit. I said, holy shit, Democrats are standing up and they're representing the dreamers. 3 days later, capitulation, cave in, failure, weak. How do you stand up being this spineless? This is The Guardian. I saw this and I was fascinated by this. Ultimately, they decide to shut down the government with this idea of we're going to represent dreamers, and if this is not going to be a part of the spending bill, if DACA is not going to be a part of it, goddamn, we're going to shut it down. We're going to shut it down. 3 days later, capitulation. Full capitulation. Utter, complete, and absolute failure. How do you stand up with a spine this week? You're, for the most part, for all intents and purposes, invertebrates. I don't understand how you're going to be in Congress representing any interests and be this weak. Republicans own the House, the Senate, the Supreme Court, the presidency. They own it all. Any issue with the government, meaning if they can't keep the government open, that's on them. You bend over backwards time and time again in order to come up with compromises starting from your 50-yard line. And in this particular case, when you're supposed to represent a particular interest, especially since you're the party of identity, you've carved out your niches being, we're the party of identity. We're fighting for all of these different groups in order to get the votes from all of these different groups. We give lip service to all of these different groups. One of these groups being Hispanics. Now, I'm not saying that all Hispanics are here illegally. No such thing. I am saying that the Hispanics, the dreamers, this quagmire that the Democrats made, this quagmire that the Democrats didn't fix when they had complete power in the political apparatus, this quagmire that they've used to scam votes, that they've used to essentially incentivize Hispanics to vote for them, either one of two ways. Either vote for Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump is going to kick you out the country, or we're going to use this issue to beat Republicans over the head with, because for all intents and purposes, Americans don't want people who didn't have a choice in coming here kicked out of the country. America, for the most part, for all intents and purposes, agreed with this position. Most Americans don't want kids who came to this country through no fault of their own kicked out into a country that they have no semblance of or no understanding of. Meaning, if you were raised here, for all intents and purposes, you are American. No, not by legal standards or legal definitions, but for all intents and purposes. The legalities of this is somewhat of a legal fiction. Yes, it's real from a legal context. I'm just saying, if you grew up here, your culture, who you are, is fundamentally American. How you walk, talk, act, the way you relate to the world, the way the world relates to you, is fundamentally American. Being American is not God-given. It's purely a cultural significance. The party of identity. The party that screams and bitches and moans and continuously goes with the idea of identity to the exclusion of everything else, caved on an issue that was built literally in I guess you could say the pretext of it, or the kernel of this is identity. The one wheelhouse that the Democrats possess, that the Democrats screaming about, even on that item, failure. Weak. This is Guardian. This is embarrassing. This is absolutely embarrassing. We're going to shut the government down. But a few days later, okay, we give. Uncle. It's fucking embarrassing. This is the Guardian. Let's see. And let's give me 1 second. This is not my normal setup. All right. Compromise or cave-in. It's called a cave-in. Democrats' deal to end shutdown sows division. Look at the faces in the background. Those people aren't satisfied at all. You scam us for votes, and then this is the way you're going to behave. Amazing. Senate Democrats on Monday compromised on a short-term spending measure to reopen the federal government after forcing a shutdown over an impasse on immigration. But some progressives and immigration activists preferred another word. Caved. Oh, I could go further. Weak. Failure. Unmitigated disaster for the DACA recipients. Created a mess. And then when it came down to trying to be a bulwark against Republicans on this, failure. 3 days after Democrats rejected a stopgap bill because it did not include protection for Dreamers, young undocumented immigrants shielded by the Obama-era program known as Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA, they yielded, ending the first government shutdown in half a decade. In an 81-18 vote on Monday, Democrats approved a 3-week spending measure in exchange for a commitment from Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, who pledged to bring up legislation that would extend protections to Dreamers whose status was thrown into chaos when Trump canceled in September. He promised to do so, or he pledged to do so, and because Mitch McConnell pledged to do so, you can completely trust Mitch McConnell to do that. I have a question. What happens if Mitch McConnell does bring this up and they vote this down? What happens? Are you going to do another government shutdown? What happens? Are you going to continuously shut the government down over and over and over again when they bring up and they shoot down one bill after another? Do you understand that Mitch McConnell may not necessarily have the power to do what you're talking about? Just because he brings it up doesn't necessarily mean that it would pass. In no way does this give protection to the Dreamers. And this will be a cold comfort to people who, A, gave their information to the government itself, B, are under threat of being deported by these rabid thugs that are working for ICE. Let's keep going. There's an interesting dynamic here at work. The House passed the bill later on Monday in a vote largely along party lines. Dick Durbin, the most vulgar name in Congress, the number 2 Democrat in the Senate and one of the leading congressional advocates for Dreamers, saw the silver lining. Did he now? Parts of this were a victory. I'm glad he understands that this was a failure. And he's looking at the bright side. Hey, parts of this were a victory. When people succeed at something, when I succeed at something, when I'm doing something, I don't say parts of this were a victory. You only look for the silver lining. You only look for the kernel. You know, you only dig through the sand to find the one, here's something nice. When it's understood to be a failure. Dick Durbin knows this is a failure. He understands it. Otherwise, Dick Durbin wouldn't say the positive of this, the silver lining of this. Let's keep going. Glad he understands this was a failure. Parts of this were a victory in terms of moving the immigration for the first time in 5 years with a deadline and an understood procedure, with the other side acknowledging this is about DACA, Durbin said. Well, of course they knew it was about DACA. Doesn't mean they're going to do anything about it. Tim Kaine, the 2016 Democratic nominee for vice president, echoed this. Close. Echoed this commitment we've made today as we're going to move forward on immigration whether or not the president wants us to. Okay, whatever. Yet, other Democrats were skeptical of leaving the fate in the hands of the Senate Majority Leader, who they do not trust, and the president, who has proved to be an unpredictable negotiator. Donald Trump changes his mind with the weather. If Donald Trump sees a cloud in the sky of a giraffe, Donald Trump changes his mind. If Donald Trump steps off the curb, Donald Trump changes his mind. Donald Trump can look at Fox News, get a brain fart, tweet something out, and changes his mind. And this is the unpredictable negotiator that these guys are putting the hands or the fate of the dreamers into. What do you believe in and what do you represent? That's a fundamental question. In this one moment where you were at the very least standing for something that was real and legitimate, even in this moment, most people, well, a lot of people, at least me, when I'm representing somebody else's interests, I can be fucking fantastic. Because it's not me who I'm representing at that point. I understand that the fate of somebody else is dependent upon my actions. The fate of 800,000 people. And you can make an argument this is more, because those people have connections in various communities all throughout the country. This is not purely about Hispanics. This is not purely about just these 800,000 kids who were born here illegally. These kids have connections. They have families. They have people who care about them, depend on them. All of these things. All of these things. They have connections in the community itself. They were raised here. The one moment, the one glaring moment where you guys were actually doing something legit and doing something good and representing something or somebody who needed to be represented, and even in this one moment, fail. Fucking fail. Let's keep going. It's amazing. I don't believe he made any commitments whatsoever, Kamala Harris, a senator from California who opposed the bill, said after the Senate advanced the measure. And I think it will be foolhardy to believe he made a commitment. Yes, I agree with Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is being a shameless politician here because Kamala Harris wants to run for president. And because Kamala Harris wants to run for president, she understands that there is a particular base that she is going to need. She understands that. This is posturing. Harris was among several progressive lawmakers and potential 2020 presidential candidates who rejected the bill, including Cory Booker, Kristen Gillibrand, Bernie Sanders, and Elizabeth Warren. All of them know that this is toxic. They understand it. They get it from flesh to bone. Anyone with even a semblance of political awareness knows that this is toxic. Your base wants you to stand up. Your base, the wind behind your back, is pushing you to behave a particular way. And despite your base pushing you to behave a particular way, you still fold. You still fold. Let's keep going. Democrats went into the weekend confident that voters were on their side. Public polling indicated that Republicans, who control both chambers of Congress, the White House, would be held responsible. But Trump and the Republicans spent days since the shutdown attacking Democrats and prioritizing undocumented immigrants over the members of the military. I think if we learn anything during this process, it's that a strategy to shut down the government over issues of illegal immigration is something the American people didn't understand and would not have understood in the future, McConnell said in his remarks. In contrast to the 2013 government shutdown, when conservative Republicans threatened to close the government over Obamacare, Democrats did achieve some successes. They had long pushed for reauthorization of the childhood health insurance program, and concessions by Mitch McConnell for a floor vote on immigration could spur action on immigration while shifting the onus back to Republicans. This, however, did not satisfy many activists in the party's base who accused lawmakers of betrayal. That is a word for it. Last week, I was moved to tears of joy when Democrats stood up and fought for progressive values and dreamers. It wasn't progressive values, it was the dreamers, said Frank Sherry, the executive director of American Voice National Immigration Advocacy Group. Today, I am moved to tears of disappointment and anger that Democrats blinked. You mean they fell over like a cheap suit? Fell over like a fucking cheap suit. A drawdown was particularly glaring in the aftermath of the Women's March, which saw tens of thousands of activists in cities across the country protest Trump and congressional Republicans. Many of the women carried signs in support of DREAM Act, legislative fix for young immigrants. Millions of people flooded the streets in every major city to stand up to Trump this weekend, said Leah Greenberg, the co-executive director of the Indivisible, an influential activist network whose constituents want you to fight. How can you possibly not understand that? They understand it. They're just weak. Weak, weak, weak. Charles Chamberlain, the executive director of the progressive organization Democracy for America, said Democrats' stunning display of moral and political cowardice jeopardizes the party's chances of reclaiming the House majority in 2018. Progressive and immigration advocates are doubtful that the House will take up the measure to offer legal status to undocumented immigrants. House Speaker Paul Ryan has not agreed to bring the immigration bill up for a vote. Further, Republicans aren't sure what Trump wants on immigration. If Trump can be compelled to do something other than cower in fear, he could flip the House in an instant. Ben Wickler, the Washington director at MoveOn.org. Short of that, it takes a tsunami of grassroots pressure to make the Republicans who say they support Dreamers actually use the power they hold. Not all progressive organizations heap blame on Democrats. It's remarkable that Republicans cannot keep the Republican-run government open. Now we must ensure Mitch McConnell keeps his word. You know, that brings up a good point. Just because Mitch McConnell may bring it up for a vote doesn't mean that Paul Ryan would. Doesn't mean that Paul Ryan made no agreements. You've made an agreement with Mitch McConnell. You understand that there are two branches in regards to the legislative branch. You have the House and the Senate. Just because the Senate said they'll bring something up doesn't necessarily mean that the House will. And even if Mitch McConnell does keep his word and brings it up, what if it loses? What if it doesn't pass? What if the Republicans shoot it down? Republicans hold the majority in the Senate. Then what? Then what? Do you shut the government down again on DACA? Do you continuously shut the government down over and over and over again? I mean, you are not going to do this multiple times. And I got to be honest. The American public might have been with you the first time that you did it, particularly if you held your ground. They're not going to be in for this thing of multiple shutdowns because you're not going to get your way on DACA. This is an immense political failure. Political cowardice is right. Moral cowardice is absolutely right. These kids should be apoplectic. The people who support your party, who are Hispanics, who have family, who are relatives, who may potentially be deported based on your failures, should be apoplectic. You don't deserve to win in 2018. You don't deserve it at all. So, yeah, you don't deserve to win in 2018. This is amazing. This is an amazing political cowardice. I'm fascinated by this. You're going to go so far as to shut the government down and then within 3 days resign, capitulate. We give. We give. You got us. You got us. How do you even stand up? It's like you've been living in space for 10 years and you touch down on Earth and your spine just crumples under the weight of gravity. In this case, political gravity. It's amazing. Let's see comments. I'm annoyed by this. I got to be honest. I'm absolutely annoyed by this. Diesel D's, the puppet show at a stage manufactured son, they would give the Democrats or the DSA innocuous. Okay, I don't know what you're saying. Carolyn Clark, forget the two parties. It really doesn't matter at this later stage. Carolyn, it doesn't matter to you because you're not going to be deported. Like, I understand this idea of people saying this is theater, this doesn't matter. Well, what the fuck ever. If you're one of the people who are going to get grabbed by these thugs and maniacs and kicked out of the country and kicked into a country that you have no semblance or relation to, it will matter to you. It will matter a big deal to you. So this idea that it doesn't matter, no. Luca Clemente, a slug. I would rather my life depended on the action of a slug than on the action of the Democratic Party. You have a better chance with a slug. A slug has more of a spine than the Democratic Party does. The whole system is lost. Lock her up. Yes, the whole system is lost, but this is not about the whole system. Understand what I'm saying. This is not about the whole system. This is a very specific issue. You have 800,000, roughly 800,000, I think a little bit more than that, who were left in limbo by the Democratic Party. Now, Democrats had the House, the Senate, and the presidency, and they did squat on this particular issue when they had all that power. They lost that power, and then all of a sudden they want to talk about immigration. Well, you've lost the power. You had the opportunity to do something, you didn't do it. Putting these kids in limbo, going into the Republican House, when Republicans won, Obama had the opportunity to clear these kids so these kids wouldn't go into a Trump administration. He didn't do it. They used this purely for political gamesmanship. And now that they use this for political gamesmanship, there are real world political consequences. There are 800,000 people, nearly roughly 1 million human beings. They're going to be grabbed, put in cuffs, stuffed into a cage, put on an airplane, or put on some kind of boat or car or whatever else, and sent into a country that they have no relation to. No relation to. Garno, what did I tell you, dude? The deal was already made, and whatever offer is done deal, we might not ever know what the actual deal was. Yeah, I don't know that. I don't know that. I don't have that information. That's not the information I'm presented with. Tech move. Republicans only ones with game plan playing. Yeah, I don't know what this is. Pancho, okay. Could you tell me how someone who looks like you could have a passport and shares you from Edinburgh? No offense, that was a custom officer said to me months after Brexit. In England, oh, that's a goddamn shame. Vermont legalized herb today starting 7/1/2018. Hey, that's positive. That's positive. We can get stoned. That's good. That's good. Joan Levino, Democrats treat grassroots activists as useful idiots, nothing more. Joan, yes. But understand, they treat grassroots activists as useful idiots because grassroots activists allow themselves to be treated as useful idiots. If you want the party to change, then you need a third party. I know that sounds weird. I know this sounds a little off the wall, but it's fundamentally and absolutely true. For people who actually care about the Democratic Party, if you want that party to be pushed to the left and pushed to something that's less useless, that's useful for something, then you need a third party. Meaning you need something real outside of the party itself. Personally, I like the idea of Nick Braunus. This idea of having this kind of coalition of lefty progressive groups, Greens, DSA, all of them, coming together under one banner, almost like a confederation of sorts. Each group maintains its identity while at the same time working in coordination with the whole. So yes, the entirety of the thing may have a particular name. They may vote on the name, whatever else they want to call the group. But each group, for the time being, retains its identity. So if you're a Green, you could remain a Green. Ultimately, you would have votes in that particular delegation. I love the idea. I love the idea. And I got to be honest, I think it's something we all should work towards. These guys are spineless. These guys are spineless. They're fucking worthless. Vermont Brad Smith. I guess the federal war on MJ is so unpopular and the tidal wave of money so strong, I don't think they can really do much. No, the federal government, if Jeff Sessions wanted to, they could. They could. Lisa Hauserman. Jamal, thank you for your excellent observations, commentary, and all that jazz. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you. I appreciate it. Garnome, the only people who make it to DC are those who are willing to sell out populations. Essentially, you have to sell out in order to get in. Yeah, fair enough. Lori Alt, the duopoly needs to be smashed. But the only way to smash that duopoly, really, honestly, the only way to smash that duopoly is outside of the duopoly itself. That's the only way. Because this is embarrassing. This is embarrassing. Think of the ridiculousness of the situation of going so far as to shut the government down. And then after you shut the government down, you don't get what you want. And you capitulate. And in that capitulation, there was nothing forcing you to capitulate. You did so with this idea of, hey, okay, we'll give you a vote. Just cut the government back on. Now, the problem with this is, if your vote fails, meaning you have no approvals, you have no pledges that this is going to pass. If this fails, then what? Then what? Mitch McConnell brings it up for a vote. You lose. Then what? In 3 weeks, are you going to shut the government down again for DACA? 3 weeks after that. I guess I'm asking, what is the end game to this? What happens when there is no deal? What happens? Even if Mitch McConnell approves your measure, Paul Ryan gave you no deals. Paul Ryan made no agreements with you at all, at least not on this particular case. It is very possible that you're going to end up in this exact same situation again. That's assuming you even had the balls to do it twice, or having the vagina to do it twice. There was a sign at the Women's March that my vagina is your worst fucking nightmare. That's a whole other topic. That's a whole other topic that needs to be discussed. This may be political theater. Yes, Democrats use DACA recipients for political gamesmanship. That's absolutely true. Democrats use all of these identity groups for political gamesmanship. That is absolutely true. Democrats created this issue. That is absolutely true. They had the opportunity to fix it. They didn't. They let it go into a Republican presidency with a House, a Senate, and a Supreme Court, all of which they were antagonistic towards these exact aims. This was infinitely predictable. The moment that Obama let this slide, meaning the moment that Democrats allowed this issue to go into Republican hands, this was infinitely predictable. The thought was, however, we can use this. But understand what that means. We can use this means we can use the misery and despair of the 800,000 people who are going to be kicked out of this country for our political ends. How gross is that? How gross is that? Politics, for the sake of politics. There's sometimes where I don't necessarily look at the real world consequences of stuff. I look at the politics of it, because I think sometimes the politics of it matters more than some of the other issues. Meaning there's a larger context at times. This is very specific, however. This is 800,000 people, human beings. They breathe, they sleep, they eat, They need food, clothing, shelter. They get lonely, they get tired, they want to have sex. Sometimes they want to be abstinent. Sometimes they dislike their wives. Sometimes they dislike their husbands. Sometimes they yell and argue and bitch and moan and complain. They're human beings. They're just like you. They're just like me. These human beings, come on. There we go. Who's going to be kicked out of the country? And would you think so mildly of this if it was you on the line? If it was your mom or your cousin or your uncle or your brother or your sister or your niece or your nephew? Would you be so light in the way that you're thinking about this if this was you? They had one mission. Just one. Represent the issue or represent the interests of their constituents. Represent the interests of the people who they continuously scam and con for votes. And in this one issue, one task, one job, one responsibility, failed. They failed. Republicans have the House, the Senate, the Supreme Court, and the presidency. The fault of this, the obligation to turn the government back on, is theirs. Look, I'm not going to rant, at least not anymore than I have already. I'm just saying this is embarrassing. This is embarrassing. It's fundamentally embarrassing. And by the way, there's a difference between Democrats trying to force a shutdown in order to represent and protect 800,000 people and Republicans trying to protect their fucking donors. There's a difference in those things. There's a massive difference in those things. All of these things are not equal. It's one thing to actually protect and be in defense of somebody else, somebody of worth and somebody of value. It is another thing to be in defense of the top 1%, plutocrats. There's a mass difference in those things. And the idea that these guys are not willing to go to bat for a group who they continuously scam for votes, I'm sorry, is completely and entirely and utterly embarrassing. It's embarrassing. So I'm not going to beat a dead horse. It annoys me how weak they are. And it's like, I mean, fuck, man. You have 800,000 people who are depending on them. 800,000 people. Lorms, just got the alert. What did I miss? You missed the Democratic Party capitulating and failing again. Capitulating and failing again. Kevin, let's see. Swatter dude. It's up to state governments and state legislatures to stop deportation now, and you and me joining local groups that are fighting the local DACA kids. Stacey E. Feckless. See Democrats. 1329C. A huge crime against humanity is going to happen. Laura All, they don't fucking care. No, they don't. No, they don't. There's one or two things are true. Either they don't care or they're too spineless to do anything about it. I don't particularly care which one. I don't particularly care which one. All right. So, yeah, I'm not going to completely bitch and complain. I'm going to end it here. I have one more show that I want to do before we leave. We have a 7 o'clock flight. Xander GC, Democrats are worthless. They are worthless. They don't deserve to win in 2018. Nobody that spineless and weak deserves to be in Congress. I'm sorry. All of these people should be voted out. All of them. There is no... this is mind-blowing. This is mind-blowing. One fucking task. Just one. One task. You had one job, one mission. They gave you your orders. Go out there and protect this particular group, this demographic. And I would imagine in the moment, it's like, how does it feel? Does it feel good? Like they're shut it down. We're going to protect these people who came to this country through no fault of their own. I feel strong, empowered by this. Oh my God, what is this feeling? It feels like I'm representing something. Oh my God, it feels good. It feels good. 3 days later, failure. 3 days later, failure. Bullshit, man. I hear the comparison between people versus donors, but you gotta consider voters versus non-voters. Democrats had no power in the stunt. That was their bad move. Shouldn't have used DACA as a pawn without power. No, that's not true. Bullshit, man. That's not true. So in United States Senate, the Senate puts the brakes. They always think of the Senate as this kind of bulwark. There are 2 senators for each state. Because there are only 2 senators for each state, this gives smaller states more power than, or equal power with some of the larger states. Democrats had the capacity to force Republicans to reopen the government only through the use of DACA, meaning that governments should have stayed shut until Republicans came to some deal on this. Republicans have the House, the Senate, Supreme Court, and the presidency. If they want to open the government, God damn it, they open the government and they come up with a way to do it. Democrats should not have caved. They should not have caved. So, yes, they should have shut the government down over this because this is their interest, it's their constituency. No, they shouldn't have caved. And yes, they had the power to keep this government shut until they came to some resolution on this deal. Right now, they have no deal, no resolution. So, I am going to end this now. Thank all of you guys for showing up. What time is this? Let's see, it's like 11 o'clock. Yeah, it's like 10 o'clock. Yeah. So I'm going to end this. Yeah, I'm going to end this. All right, guys. I appreciate you guys for showing up and listening to me bitch about this. This pissed me off when I saw this. It's like 3 days later. Oh, Uncle, you got us. You got us. You knew we didn't have a spine. You knew we didn't have a spine. So yeah, you got us. You got us. Oh, dude, it's a time zone. It's 4 a.m. and we have a flight like in a bit. So, bullshit, man. It's interesting seeing Rand Paul escape all the blame and the shutdown despite voting against. What's wild about this is in that article they said Democrats were going into, confident in everything else, but Republicans were attacking them. And it's like, of course Republicans weren't attacking them. I mean, if the reason Democrats caved was because Republicans were attacking them, then they're fucking idiots. It's like, certainly they understood that they were going to be attacked for this in the same way the Democrats attacked Republicans for this. This is politics. You're going to spin the narrative based on make yourself look better or to excuse blame. It's like, come on. Are they seriously making the case that Democrats folded because Republicans said bad things about them? If that's true, they shouldn't be in politics. That is political weakness to a degree that I've never seen before. Like, that's political weakness to a degree that is unfathomable. That is unfathomable. This is amazing. Fucking amazing. So I'm going to end it here. I know I keep saying it. You guys have a good one and be safe. If you guys enjoy the content, feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support through Patreon. Thanks, guys.